Okay, so we are live. So first off, I want to say welcome to the folks that are watching the replay. And what we're going to be talking about today is going to be all the legal things to think about during this time period. So, we're in the midst of the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and all that's happening in the world and how that's affecting e-commerce, both positively and not so positively. So excited to have on today Robert Wright, who's an attorney that can help us with some of the legal things here to talk about. So Robert, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah. So you and I have worked together in a couple different projects. Both you were a sponsor of Brand Accelerator Live, as well as you helped me in my own business because I had someone on Groupon who was who was operating under my name.
Yeah,
I just like person calling me wanting their money back, and I was like, I don't have your money. I don't even sell on Groupon. And I come to find there's people operating under my name on Groupon. And so the crazy thing was we had to get that taken care of. And so thank you for your help getting that swiftly taken care of and booted off. So happy to give everyone just a quick little... Yeah. So if you don't mind, just give everyone a quick little rundown on who you are and how you help e-commerce sellers.
Yeah. So I'm what I call myself a private label law attorney. So really my practice is devoted to helping private label sellers protect themselves on Amazon, help protect their brands as they sell both domestically and internationally. If you have want to work through the brand registry process, I help folks do that with trademark registrations, form a business. I can help you do that. People are stealing your product photos and putting them on Groupon or eBay or other platforms. I can help get those taken down. Basically, any sort of legal need that you might have as a private label seller, I can help you with. So that's me. And in addition, kind of the unique wrinkle to the whole thing is not only am I a lawyer, I'm a private label seller myself. So I sell products, private label products on Amazon.com throughout Europe. We'll be headed to Australia later this year. Once the world calms down a little bit, we're going to be hitting Australia. So
awesome. Good. So you're selling in multiple marketplaces. That's always a good thing.
International is where it is.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity outside of the U.S. that people sometimes miss out on. All right. So what are some of the big hot topics right now from a legal standpoint?
From a legal standpoint, certainly, one of the things that just hit my desk the other day is you've seen with Amazon kind of locking down and focusing on essential products. There's been a lot of entrepreneurs that are trying to take advantage from a price perspective of the crisis and have just cranked up prices for products to ridiculous amounts. Amazon is now pushing back on that. And if you are what they're considered to be price gouging, they are removing listings and they're potentially removing accounts. I don't have a lot of details beyond that because this is all changing in real time. But just as a matter of ethics, as a matter of law, one of the things you don't want to be doing in the midst of something like this is trying to make an unfair profit. So, charging a reasonable price for your product, certainly important. You want to stay off Amazon's radar in terms of maybe, doing things the wrong way. And so if you were selling products for a certain amount prior to all of this happening, I would continue to sell it for that amount, maybe a little bit of an uptick, but certainly not something ridiculous because again, Amazon is not taking kindly to that. So avoid that for sure. Not COVID related, but certainly very much something that's relevant these days are account suspensions. Per Amazon's, a source I have within Amazon, they're dealing with about 75,000 account suspensions a week currently. And so if you've created a new account, my guess here within the last little bit, my guess is it has been immediately deactivated, and they're asking for things like a valid credit card and a utility bill and a business license. That is happening just across the board. And helping sellers navigate that is one of the things that I've been working with folks on. It's been a real challenge, especially not so much now with people wanting to ship products inbound and those are being restricted, but trying to create that base from which they're going to grow their private label brands. You got to have an Amazon account, and getting one is in pretty short supply these days.
Gotcha. So there's a few little topics we can dive into there. So let's dive into the price gouging real quick. So do we even know, is there a threshold? Like what is price gouging and is it all products? Because I've heard different stories from people.
Yeah, no, and again, like this is real time, so not a ton of information on this. I mean, I think
Hmm.
one of the things that you want to look at is just, I don't know that it's more art than it is science, right? Like there's not definitive levels of pricing, but if you have a mask, for example, that normally would sell for about $15 and you're trying to sell it for 75, you're probably, going to get in
Mm.
trouble with that, right? A $15 mask to, changing it to $19, I don't think that doesn't feel like price gouging to me. But the more unreasonable the fee gets that you're charging, I think the more likely you are to maybe be on Amazon's radar. In the law, for example, there's an ethical rule actually. So legal fees have to be reasonable, right? It was what's a reasonable fee? What does that mean? Well, it's what the market bears, right? So
Mm.
if the legal market around you is $200 an hour and you're charging 1,000, that's not a reasonable fee. And if anybody kind of wanted to kind of take you to task over that, they could with the local ethics bar. I think the same principles apply in the Amazon space. If
Hmm.
the market seems to be about $24 for a particular item, you should be around about $24. The further you get away from that, again, you want to be in Amazon's good graces because that's, for most sellers, that's a key piece of their storefront. Don't do anything stupid there. Sell at a competitive price, certainly make money. That's what e-commerce is all about. But the further you get away from kind of a reasonable fee, I think the more likely you are to get in some trouble.
That's so true. That's so true. So, but I guess the question always comes in with people's mind is what is reasonable. So like
Yeah.
maybe it's one of those things like if you're going to raise prices on something, be very cautious in how incremental you do it, possibly.
I think so. And I think it also just look at the market around you. So, I mean, if everybody's selling a mask for $50, well, then the market seems to be bearing $50. If it's one of those things that can't arrest us all, right? If we're all doing it,
Right.
well, then they can't take out everybody, but because that's what the market is. But, what I would really, I think it's, it when you see it. If you're gouging on a price. I'm not talking about, you're making a good profit. What I'm talking about is, that like you're making, 50x of what you should be making of this thing. That's when you're going to know what's unreasonable. You'll know it when you see it. You'll know it when you do it. Again, I don't know that Amazon's going to spend tons of time kind of running around taking down sellers. That's not in their interest. But Amazon's always had an interest in making sure that their marketplace is competitive, that it has good, solid, legitimate sellers that are on it. And so if you're doing something that runs against the grain with those respects, then you could find yourself in some hot water.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely something to, just we want to try to keep our nose clean. And it's always a hot topic here in Florida with gas prices every time there's a
Yeah.
hurricane because people
Yeah.
start increasing gas. Now, I know people will
You're right.
argue like, oh, well, that's price gouging or that's just the fair market or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to be safe than right, depending
Yeah.
on what your philosophy is.
I think so. I think so. I mean, it's funny, certainly an issue like price gouging is kind of this great, interplay of ethics and the law and, just commercial realism. But to me, I do my ecom business for the long term. It's not this immediate sort of thing. Yes, you
Right.
want to take advantage of opportunity, but there's a broader perspective. So do good business, do smart business, and oftentimes that means maybe being cautious about upticking price. Maybe that means being taking a look at the market and seeing, well, what are people doing there, and then making sure that you're not at the lead, because again, that's just going to put you on a radar. Frankly, you don't want to be on Amazon's radar for any reason.
Exactly. So, all right. So, one thing I do want to touch on there that you mentioned is looking for opportunity.
Yeah,
So, there are opportunities here. Sometimes we
100%.
can get fearful of the unknown, especially as
Mhm.
things are changing.
Yeah.
But the reality is, there's a lot of possibility out there right now.
There
So,
really is. Yeah. Sun Tzu and his Art of War. I always think about business. I really do believe this, but
kind of is. Yeah.
it is. If you go back and read the text, in the midst of chaos, there's opportunity. And that's very true, right?
Hmm.
Certainly, I think if you weren't thinking about selling internationally prior to all of this, you should be thinking about it now, right? Access to more markets is just better for your
Right.
business. And so certainly the US has been impacted by COVID in a way that, other countries haven't, that,
Hmm.
certain goods aren't restricted overseas that are restricted here. the more access to more people that you have, just the better off for your business. So as you have this time, start thinking about that. Start thinking about selling in Canada or looking at Mexico or getting into Europe or taking a look at Australia. Start putting together a plan for getting into more markets. Long term, that's just going to be better for your business. If that's not of interest, what do? Oh, I can't ship products into Amazon. I don't sell essential products. I'm dead in the water. You're not dead in the water. Like at the end, this too will pass. At some point, this is going to end, and things are going to go back to somewhat normal. I don't know what normal looks like on the other end of this, but what I do know is that people are going to continue to buy stuff on Amazon. So if you have existing listings and you've just kind of gotten lazy, and maybe they're not as optimized as they should be, or maybe those keywords in the back end haven't taken a look at those in a while. Start tidying up the shop, fix them up, maybe take some new product images, maybe add some infographics, maybe, just kind of, take a look at your PPC campaigns or running the numbers to make sure that everything's as profitable as you thought it was, right? We've got time. How we use that time is up to us. We can stick our head in the sand and say, oh, woe is me, I can't do anything, I'm dead in the water. Or we can say, hey, I've got some time, can't ship products inbound right now, what can I do? Growing your business isn't always necessarily about adding more products or getting more products into play. And the good thing about private label, it doesn't happen overnight, right? There's always a process. It's always a system. It takes time. Well, guess what? We've got time. We can do product research. We can think about product development. We can start negotiating with suppliers. If we haven't been doing that, we can get busy doing a lot of things other than doing inbound orders. We've got time. We've got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, so true. Because history tells us there's cycles of ups and downs, and whenever there's a valley, there's another peak coming up. So, maybe it's looking into a trademark that you haven't gotten yet, or, registering your business a certain way, or maybe you need to switch to an S Corp or whatever the case is. Maybe now's the time to do that where you have time, because you're looking at this as a long-term strategy. And also, to your point, like selling internationally. So if somebody wanted to, they can go to internationalchecklist.com. I actually have a checklist. I walk them through step-by-step how to get started. So, there's all these different things we can do, during these time periods. So kind of touching on another point you brought up before was account suspensions. So what are some of the big hot topics other than like
accounts being suspended?
Accounts being suspended though for price gouging. So what are other things to consider with not getting suspended?
With not getting suspended. So, certainly I think one of the things that we need to always be doing from an Amazon perspective is making sure that we're running a clean ship, right? And so, one of the things that I'll do with clients is perform what I call a health check. It's a quick 20-minute session with folks. I'll log into their Seller Central account, and I'll basically make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. Your business address for Amazon purposes, they want an address that's tied to a utility. They want to know that electric runs to that address, that water runs to that address, that internet runs to that address. They want to make sure that someone's physically there, because utilities don't just hand out bills. They do a little bit of verification, right? It's a physical plot of land, making sure that's up to date, making sure that the legal entity name is proper, that the address is proper, looking at listings. It's amazing to me. Here we are, we're so educated as sellers, yet so many people just ignore terms of service. And that first product photo, it's not just a plain white background photo, right? It's got all sorts of flash and pizzazz in it. Those sorts of things, like Amazon puts those rules out for a reason. And while you might not get caught now, in the long term, you're likely to get caught. And so just making sure that you're running a clean ship, that your account is healthy, that it's going to stay healthy, certainly a good thing to do. And I'll help a number of sellers do that. So it, again, comes back to that notion of we've got time. How are you going to make use of that time? Look at other markets, make sure your account's good, make sure your listings are solid, optimized, ready to go. We can take advantage of all of these things if we only take the time to do it.
Exactly. Focus on PPC optimization. Focus on what is within your control and not what's outside of your control. Because if you focus on what's outside of your control, you'll always find it.
100%.
Yes. Any other words of wisdom from a legal or whatever standpoint? Because since you're kind of in the legal and seller standpoint, what else are you seeing that you might be able to give people some advice on?
Yeah, the big thing, there's been so much talk, especially within the last year, of brand registry 2.0, and so many people running and doing trademarks, and that's a great thing. Couple of things to think about there that are just kind of natural. They naturally flow from Brand Registry 2.0. One is understanding the fact that Brand Registry 2.0 is constantly evolving. A year ago, if you had a single trademark registration somewhere, on a certain list of countries in the world, you were brand registered everywhere. That's not necessarily the case anymore. And so if you're new to brand registry and you're starting to expand internationally, it's absolutely appropriate that you should be thinking about making sure your trademark is available and then starting to work through the trademark registration process, because Amazon's going to require that of brand registry as you move into other countries. Now, Canada and Mexico, a little bit different because largely linked with that North American account. I'm talking about Australia. I'm talking about Europe. I'm talking about, crossing the sea and moving into markets. So trademarks, don't think about brand registry 2.0 as just the magic bullet across all Amazon platforms. It's a little more nuanced than that. It's also constantly changing and constantly evolving. Amazon, a year and a half ago, you had to have a US trademark registration and that was it. Then it moved to a US registration or a UK registration or Australian application or registration, Mexico. They expanded that to a couple countries. Then it moved to, well, okay, if you have a UK trademark registration, you can be brand registered in the States, and you'll get enhanced brand content, you'll get additional advertising opportunities, but we're not going to enforce your rights. That's a UK trademark. We're here in the States, like you don't have any trademark rights. Like, if you cared about it, you'd have a US registration. And then most recently, you want to be brand registered in the States, you have to have a US trademark registration. You want to be brand registered in Europe, you need a European-based registration. So it's just constantly evolving. And I think sellers need to be mindful of that. I would also say that one of the natural inclinations of Brand Registry 2.0 is hijackers have gotten smarter. They've stopped trying to jump on listings and steal the buy box. Instead, they've just started copying listings and creating new ASINs and selling, using your product photos, your sales copy. If you're not investing in copyright registrations, you're not monitoring the marketplace for people who are doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act and Amazon's reaction to that creates a very effective, very efficient way to get rid of people who are doing just that. My personal record is 48 minutes in terms of the time I filed a copyright takedown to the time the listing was removed. And it's not because I'm a great lawyer. It's because literally there's an interest. Amazon has an interest in removing infringing content from their platform, because if they do, once there's a complaint, it looks legitimate and they take action, they're absolved of copyright infringement liability. And so, copyright registration is really, really powerful tool in terms of brand enforcement on Amazon these days. And it's so interesting to me. So much focus on Brand Registry 2.0, buy boxes and the like, and that's still very relevant. Don't get me wrong, but I've seen a smarter version of hijacker come out to say, hey, you sell a spatula, I sell a spatula, you've got great product photos, I'm just lazy, I'm going to copy them all. I'll upload my own, create my own listing, and I'll sell a spatula that looks just like yours. I'll even use your brand name. Hope you don't find me. Well, there's a really easy way to get them taken down. It's called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Let's talk a little bit more about it's DMCA, right?
No. Yep. DMCA.
Because it was the DMCA takedown is what you used in my situation with getting the person kicked off Groupon.
Yeah.
So how exactly does that work? Just to dive into that here for a couple minutes.
So here's the interesting thing, like Amazon, Etsy, Shopify, well, not so much Shopify corporate, Groupon, really any sort of seller's platform, whatever it would be. Generally speaking, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there are going to be some terms of service, right? Click into those terms of service. And generally speaking, if the platform is worth its salt, there's going to be a methodology by which that platform takes in complaints around things like trademarks and copyrights. And just, they will literally lay out the process of what you need to do to get content that you think is infringing your rights removed. Follow that process or have somebody help you follow that process. And whether it's somebody pretending to be your company, whether it's somebody that's just copied and swiped product photos, whether it's someone that's using a name that's similar to yours, if you've secured your legal rights in the brand name, in the product photos, in the advertising copy, in the retail packaging, that methodology, it's largely the same across platforms because it's largely based on the DMCA or the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. But if you work through that process, every platform has a vested interest in running a clean, good, solid, legitimate platform. So they have a methodology by which you can leverage to get bad content removed. So, regardless of the platform, there's a little bit of nuance between each one, but every platform has a process and a procedure to work through. Much more effective than cease and desist letters and threatening court actions. No, go straight to the source, work through the process, get the stuff removed.
And generally speaking, it's being able to prove you own that asset, whether it's the name or the photos or whatever. So what's the general concept in being able to prove that?
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately it comes to registrations, right? If you have a trademark registered with the Patent and Trademark Office, you get a nice fancy registration certificate. On the back end of that, there's a repository where you can go pull a registration number, you plug that into the platform to say, hey, I'm the registered brand owner of XYZ. Here's my trademark registration. This particular listing is leveraging my name in a way they shouldn't be. Take them down, right? So easy to prove, right? You get that registration certificate. Same thing with a copyright. It's a little bit of a different process, certainly not as thorough of a process as a trademark registration, but literally saying, here's my product photos copyright office, here's my registration. You get a registration number, you get a certificate. It's not as nice as the trademark registration certificate. It's not as pretty, but it's a registration certificate nonetheless. And again, that's a number basically that you can give the platform you're complaining to, and that shows validity, right? I mean, it just shows like, I'm the owner. How do you prove you own something? You have a utility bill for your personal address. You have a registration number for your trademark. You have a registration number for your copyright. It's proof of ownership. And if you have that, regardless of the matter at hand, you're generally able to work successfully through the process.
Yeah, the more you can plead your case with some sort of third-party verification, which usually is some sort of government entity or registration or whatever the case is, then they kind of have no other choice but to believe you.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, as we say down here in the South. And if you have a registration number, like, it's hard to say that you're not the true owner, right? You've got a certificate that claims it.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, this has been a really helpful talk. So anyone who's watching this and has additional questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. We'll do our best to answer your questions. Also, like and subscribe to this channel. And at the same time, too, if anyone wanted to get additional, more deep questions about their particular situation answered, Robert, where would they go?
Yeah, head on over to privatelabelprotection.com and you can download my brand protection blueprint. So whether you're just starting off, whether you're kind of far along the private label journey, there's very much a blueprint or a methodology that you should be following to safeguard your business. And so download the blueprint. It'll help you out at a point in the right direction and get you pointed in the way to profits and scalability. So download the blueprint, privatelabelprotection.com.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Everybody stay well and stay safe out there.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right.